This is the first video about training through your pregnancy, and I'm going to cover off today how to train through your first trimester. So if you have questions about the second and the third trimester, send them through and I'll cover them off in subsequent videos. Otherwise, it's just going to be too much to cover in one video. The main thing training through your first trimester is that you want to go through your foundations. If you don't already have the foundations of knowing how your pelvic floor and your core all works together in synchronicity with your breath, then you need to go back to your basics and just learning and understanding that, because understanding your pelvic floor, your core, and your deep core breath is going to be vital for you to carry out throughout your pregnancy. And if you haven't already learnt that, trying to learn that in the second or third trimester when your bump is already growing and your organs are already shifting and your stomach muscles are already stretching, it's very difficult to do so. So it's better to learn it now while everything's still compact, and you can get a better grasp of how everything works and comes together nicely, and then you can continue that through your pregnancy. If you don't know how to contract your core correctly, if you're not sure of the anatomy of the pelvic floor and the core, then I have videos on my page under the play button called the pelvic floor series. You can go through and watch those, and they will go through in great detail all about the anatomy and how to contract your pelvic floor, how to contract your core, how it all should work nicely together, and then things to look out for when you're not doing correctly as well. So those are the basics. Obviously, looking after your posture is another one too, more so through pregnancy, because everything is going to shift and you're more likely to get aches and pains, especially if you have poor posture. Understanding the risks of not looking after your pelvic floor and your core should be something that you should be aware of, and the risk of prolapse and diastasis recti, or the separation of the abdominal tissues to a degree where it's quite damaging and hard to come back from. They will also be covered off in the pelvic floor series if you want to go back and watch those videos. So going through your foundations, making sure you're using your core breath with every single rep of every single exercise, and then making sure you continue that throughout your pregnancy. As your stomach starts to shift and stretch, it's going to feel different. So knowing how to contract and lift your bump and your pelvic floor rather than sucking in or drawing in is very important. Also, on a day-to-day basis, now that you might feel a little bit of a stretching sensation through the uterus, and this can feel like it's your abdominal wall stretching. So it's important not to subconsciously suck your stomach muscles in throughout the day. We want to allow your stomach muscles to stretch, and that's what they're designed to do, and that's what they're going to need to do throughout the pregnancy. And the more you try to fight that by sucking your abdominal tissues in, is going to be detrimental to your pelvic floor. So just allowing your body to do what it's naturally designed to do. And the other thing is, and this is probably the main thing to be honest, is taking into account how you're feeling through your first trimester when it comes to exercise. If you're feeling shit on a day-to-day basis and you're tired, and if you have morning sickness, which if you don't know, morning sickness doesn't just happen in the morning, it's often worse in the morning and worse in the evening and the afternoon, and you can have it throughout the entire day. So depending on the degree of nausea that you have, if you're vomiting and you're actually not able to keep down your fluids and your food, obviously you're going to be a little bit more delicate than anyone else when it comes to exercise, because you don't have any nutrients in your body. So if you have severe nausea and you're unable to keep anything down, then that's something that you should be discussing with your lead maternity carer or your GP, and you can get medication to help combat that, because you need to keep nutrients inside your body, obviously. If you feel sick all of the time and you're not vomiting, then you still feel like crap, you're still very delicate when it comes to exercise, you're more likely to feel dizzy, you're obviously weaker. So all of these things need to be taken into account. Are you sleeping at night? If you can't sleep because you're sick throughout the night, if you're up peeing throughout the night as well and you're just having broken sleep and you're coming to training super tired, then that needs to be taken into account as well. The main thing through this first trimester is that you need to look after yourself. So sleep, water, nutrition. You need to be eating, drinking, and sleeping, basically, just all this vital stuff for survival as a human. And if you're not doing those things, then you need to take it easy when it comes to exercise. Then you have your women who are not feeling nauseous at all. They feel quite good. They might be a little bit tired, and if that's you, then that's fantastic and congratulations. And as long as your HCG levels are still going up, then there's no real reason for concern, and you could go and continue your exercise regime as you would until you're around 10 weeks or so, and then you'd want to sort of dial the intensity back down, or just reassess sort of where you're at that point, especially through your pelvic floor. In terms of exercise intensity, though, we want to think about that even through the first trimester. Your uterus is starting to grow. You've got hormones called relaxin, which are relaxing everything in your body, your joints, your ligaments, your soft tissues. It's there to allow your body to stretch to grow a human being. But when it comes to exercise, that's also going to have an impact on you. So even if you feel great and you're not nauseous, the fact that the relaxin is there, it's relaxing everything. So it's also relaxing through your pelvic ligaments, your pelvic floor tissues, which makes your pelvic floor more susceptible to injury or prolapse from the point of conception onwards. So anything to do with impacts like running, bouncing, does indicate a higher risk factor than walking, for example, or low impact exercise. However, it doesn't mean that you don't have to do it. It's just something to be mindful of, and to keep a lookout for feelings such as heaviness through the pelvic floor, any sort of incontinence or leakage should be addressed as well throughout that time. And the placental abruption risk is there as well, even quite early on in the pregnancy. So if we look at impact sports or combat sports such as boxing, kicking, kickboxing, rugby league, rugby, anything with high contact, your risk of placental abruption is a little bit higher. And you also want to take a look at your family history and see if there's any risk factors there that you need to be aware of from early on in your pregnancy going forward. If you're feeling really sick and you're not feeling good, you can still exercise. You just have to modify the exercise frequency, the load, and the intensity and the type as well. So, for example, if you're someone who does, this is classic, if you're someone who does high impact or HIIT classes, such as F45, for example, they might not be suitable for you anymore. You might not have the energy for it, and even if you can get through the class, if it's draining you for the rest of your day, and if you've got a job to get to and you need energy for that, you need energy to grow your human being throughout the day anyway. And this is where the most significant changes happen, is in that first trimester. So then you need to rethink, is that exercise load, because it's a stress that you're putting on the body, am I recovering from that? And if you're not, you're just going to compile the that downward spiral of being fatigued, and it's going to continue throughout the pregnancy, and you're going to end up being really tired and fatigued. So is it worth it? Probably not. So then you need to revisit the intensity and also the quality of your exercise. So if you're, again, in a class at F45 and you're doing squats to the music, say, or any sort of exercise class, you're doing squats to the music, you're not really focusing on what you're doing. Do you even know what muscles you're feeling that are working at that time? Can you control your breathing and synchronicity with your movements? Can you feel your pelvic floor? Are you even thinking about your pelvic floor and your core? If the answer is no to any of those questions, then you need to rethink your exercise choices as well here. So are you better off then doing your own training, or even just doing the class but dropping to your own intensity and controlling your own movements, and really think about what you're doing every single rep of every single exercise throughout your routine? And then you might be able to modify something that you're normally doing, like an exercise class, but put it at a level where it's suitable for you and where you're going to get the most benefit from it. Focusing on the main muscle groups is important throughout the pregnancy, and now is a really great time to start. So focusing on the pelvic floor If your pelvic floor is on the weaker side, learning how to strengthen that and starting to implement a pelvic floor lift with every single rep of every single exercise. And this goes for any type of pelvic floor. Your pelvic floor should lift with every single rep of every single exercise on your exhalation. If your pelvic floor is hypertonic, or if you have any sort of pelvic pain, lower back pain, tailbone pain, troubles with speculums on exams, for example, these can all indicate a hypertonic pelvic floor, or a pelvic floor that is too tight and it's not able to relax enough. So then you'd want to work on down training and relaxing your pelvic floor and getting it to function with the lift on your exhalation as well. But it also needs to learn how to let itself go and go back to its resting position, which is important. Your abdominal muscles, you've got to be able to contract them correctly, again, with every single exhale of every single rep of every single exercise, but you've got to do it right. And then implementing that throughout your exercise regime as well. Your glutes, they've got to be super strong throughout your pregnancy. I mean, they're really like the secret sauce that's holding up your body and giving you a whole lot of stability throughout the day on a normal day. And then you go and add the load of growing a human being in the front of your belly and the load on your hips. You really need strong glutes throughout your pregnancy, and they're going to be a crucial part of keeping you safe postpartum as well, and allowing you to bounce back a little bit more quickly. Strong legs, obviously they go together with the glutes to hold the weight up of your body in that third trimester, when you really are quite heavy and you're needing that support from below to support the forces from above. Your back muscles, you want to have good posture. You need to have strong back muscles to hold yourself upright. And then what's going to happen after the baby's born? You're holding a baby all day long, all night, breastfeeding, cuddling, looking down at your baby. If you don't have good posture and strong back muscles, then you're going to be more likely to have back pain. I'd say you're definitely going to get back pain actually in this sort of scenario if you don't have good posture or strong muscles to support your body. So taking that into account, and then looking at the hormone changes as well. So we talked about relaxin, but because everything's relaxing through your body, your ligaments, your joints, your soft tissues, you're more likely to injure yourself through your joints in a pregnancy because of the hormones, if you're going at the same sort of level of intensity that you normally would, because your joints just don't have that hormone running through them like you do in pregnancy otherwise. Your progesterone levels and your estrogen levels are also going to increase a lot. So your progesterone levels, they're going to make you pee a lot through that first trimester until your placenta starts to take on the role of providing progesterone for you. And you're tired already. And then in terms of, hello, my client's just showing up. In terms of your blood pressure, your hormone levels will help to assist in dilating your blood vessels, because your blood volume will pretty much double for your pregnancy. So if you think about that, there's a lot of extra blood pumping through your body that needs to be cleansed and cleaned by your liver. So all of your organs are working so much harder than they would. But there's a big impact on exercise when it comes to your cardiac output. So your blood vessels will dilate to allow for all of that extra blood to be pumped through. And in turn, your blood pressure, so the pressure of the blood coming through those vessels, will drop. And it drops quite significantly. So your blood pressure, if you get it checked, they might say, oh, it's beautifully low. And that's a good thing, yes. But if your heart rate can be quite high while your blood pressure is low. And then if you go to do some sort of physical exercise, especially anything cardio based or anything that gets your heart rate up, having low blood pressure and a high heart rate can make you feel very dizzy very quickly. Even moving, say, from a floor exercise to a standing exercise, going between the two, if you move too quickly, you can get dizzy. And same thing for just getting up out of bed in the morning. And that's all due to your blood pressure as well. So making slower movements and if your blood pressure is really low and your heart rate's quite high and you just can't handle the cardio, then rethink it. Do you really need to be doing your cardio exercise? Maybe you could go for a nice slow walk instead, or do some nice slow controlled focused floor work, which doesn't require too much energy and is still working towards your goals of what you need to be strong through your pregnancy and for your postpartum recovery as well. So your postpartum recovery should be at the forefront of your training plan and your program, especially if you're working with a professional throughout your pregnancy. In terms of if you're a partner of someone who is pregnant and how can you support them best, I think like through the first trimester, it's just making sure she's okay, making sure she's sleeping, eating, drinking, getting hugs. Sometimes she might just need a hug. Being careful of and mindful of her emotions through the first and the third trimester. Those are our emotional points and the danger zones of when you need to really tread carefully. And then just maybe doing something together. So asking her, do you want to go to a class together? Can we go for a walk? Should we go to the gym together? And just supporting her that way. If you have questions on the second and the third trimester, please fire them through to me and I will cover them off in subsequent videos. Otherwise, the main thing here is just to look after yourself, be safe, figure out what is important for you through your pregnancy, and then start to implement those muscle groups as your main focus through your training plan from your pregnancy throughout. In the second and the third trimester, a lot more modifications are required, so I'll cover those off in the upcoming videos.